generally the spatial label varies between a village and the districts. And basically there was a debate between which is the most appropriate label. Even you can think about, you can give a very challenging idea about the spatial level of development. But at present, based on the documents that we have reviewed, you can see that there is a very unique debate between the community development block and the districts. Now, what has happened in the whole sequence in the last, say, 50 years? In 1957, there was a Balwant Rai Mehta committee report. They talked about three-tier Panchayati Raj system. So it is the structure. It has nothing to do with the spatial label. But in that structural framework, they have identified village and block and the districts. And then three-tier system, we call three-tier local self-government system, because that's very important. Now, in between, in the planning process, there was various, especially in the third five-year plan, there were various, initiatives which were taken to really implement the plans at the grassroots level. The specific reports are already available. You can browse these reports from the references which are given at the end of this module. Okay, now in 78, there is a very interesting thing. There was a working group on block level planning. That working group said that rather than district, the block is more important. What is the benefit of block? Because block is more decentralized. When you talk about districts, you are moving towards centralization, because typically in one district, you have 10 blocks, you have 12 blocks, that happens. Okay, so this committee report, it is called Ashok Mehta committee report. They said that block development is very important. Further, in the whole process of development, the Panchayati Raj related issues were also initiated, which means that there was a Balwant Rai Mehta committee report, and after that there was another committee report published in simultaneously when the working group on block level planning was published by Ashok Mehta. It is another focus which again focused on the block level structures. Okay, so what we are saying that in 1978, it's a very interesting threshold when you have on one side the working group report on block level constituted by the Government of India, and on the other side you have another structural related report which is headed by Ashok Mehta. Interestingly, the working group on block level planning was headed by one very eminent economist. Okay, now in between, the thinking was going on. People were debating on the labels, spatial labels, and ultimately in 1982, the Government of India again appointed a working group which was headed by Professor Hanumant Rao, and the title of that report, which was published by this working group on district planning. There are 2 volumes which are published, as you see in this figure. These are 2 volumes which are published in 1984. So between these 2 years, this is for the first time a massive exercise which was conducted, where even your theories which we just talked about in the earlier module, the centrality theory, the growth pole approach, were looked in the, what Krugman used to say, in the new economic geography, was used within the district level. So a very unique Raichur district case study was seen in the 2nd volume of the report on working group on district level planning. So what the conclusion that we draw, that this working group on district level planning said that, okay, block is a very idealistic situation, but keeping in view the administrative aspects, the capacities which are available, because whenever you go down, there are less capacities, because now this is my understanding, you can argue on it, that the micro planning is a easier said than action approach. It's very easy to talk about, okay, participation, inclusiveness, bottom-up approach, but it is very difficult to implement. It is very difficult to document it. It is very difficult to make a professional document. When you talk about micro plan document, say of a block, or say of a village, or say of a district, then not only you have to see the theoretical framework, whether it is viable or not, whether the investment that you are making there will be economizing or not, whether economies of scale will come or not. All economics is going to be implemented. But very importantly, you have to see the administrative framework with the capacities. And this working group on district level planning, they said that at present, district seems to be a more appropriate institution where you can analyze the local situation, you can understand the local scenario, local resources, potential of development, and at least you can develop. You have a capability, you have a district level administrators, and these administrators are ultimately going to develop the plan, and you have other structural, the local self-government head office is also there. You can talk about Zilla Panchayat. So that debate is going on. But there is another important point, is that till this time, the micro planning was a very idealistic scenario, a very thoughtful idea of creating a kind of welfare scenario at the grassroots level. And even up to that particular point, the whole institutional framework was never made a part of the Constitution. It was a kind of directive principles. So it is your wish, your means the wish of a state or a province to implement it or not. A unique debate has been generated in India. So that's why the understanding of practice is very important. In 1992, there was a unique constitutional amendment. 2 constitutional amendments were initiated. And you, as a student of development economics, you must read these constitutional amendments very importantly. Not what I say you believe. Don't do it, because I may have my own understanding. So it is always better to collect the water from the Gangotri itself. So the Gangotri is the original constitutional amendments. And this is called 73rd and 74th constitutional amendments. These are, I think, in the recent past or in the last 30 years, 2 revolutions are very important in the context of overall development. One is this institutional development called 73rd and 74th constitutional amendment. Other is the ICT revolution, the use of information and communication technology in a massive manner. And now at this time in the 21st century, you have to not only think about how to maximize the demographic dividends, the young people, but how to maximize the benefit coming out of digital dividends. Majority of our population, the population in India or even any country, you take example of Senegal, which is an African country, a small country, but it has 98% of accessibility to the mobile telephones. So that is a very important dimension. So these 2 revolutionary development are very important. So coming back to this 73rd, 74th amendments, they identified the different spatial labels, the village, the block, and the district. They identified various administrative framework which are important for administration, for governance, and for development. And very importantly, in this whole process, all the theoretical dimensions that we have been talking about in the context of decentralized development in these two papers focusing on growth theories and development economics, you will feel very happy that all these dimensions are taken care in the 73rd and 74th amendment. When you go for constitutional amendment, what you need a massive discussion, not only in the parliament, but in the state assemblies, the fourth pillar of democracy, the press, the media, and ultimately it has been adopted, which means that it has been well accepted in the political arena that the micro development, decentralized development, inclusive development, inclusive growth are not just name or just a nomenclature. If you have to convert into a reality, you have to initiate state intervention in terms of micro plan. And this, for the first time, the 74th amendment, even I can talk about a particular article of the Constitution that makes 243ZD article that creates a new institution at the district level, and this is called District Planning Committee. Just see, very interestingly, the District Planning Committee is a very important dimension in which the whole planning framework is to be understood properly. And this is now in the Indian context. That's why I'm repeatedly provoking you as a young, component, as a young aspirant of the demographic dividend to really focus on these areas. So this whole idea of district planning committee is ultimately culminated on the basis of the great debate which is happening in the great in Indian scenario, in the democratic processes in India, in the parliament, as well as in the academic arena, in the universities, research organization, and so on, even in the public. And then ultimately, institutional structure, which shows that for all practical purpose, at present, the district is a micro planning unit. I'm not saying it is an idealistic situation. I'm not saying maybe in future you yourself can advise other appropriate level which can go even below district level. But at present, officially it has been recognized. It doesn't mean that you don't plan at the village level. Now, you have to be very careful, which means that the village level institutions, they will plan for the village. You remember carefully, because a village cannot be viable for a big health center or for a big college. So there is some kind of hierarchy of institution. So village plans are prepared and submitted to the block level. So it is like a pyramid. Like, you have, say, in a unique district, there are 200 villages, okay? Or in a typical Indian scenario, there are 200 village panchayats or village local self-governments. Now they prepare the plan, and gradually these plans are, if I use appropriate legal terminology, consolidated at the block level. So these 200 plans are consolidated, say 15 blocks. So there are 15 block plans. Further, these 15 block plans are discussed at the district level. Now that's very important. So district plans are not discussed at the higher level. So district plans are made, and then these plans, which means that your village requirements are aggregated at the block, or block requirements are further aggregated at the district level. There's a beautiful synchronization between a village and the district, and majority of these plans are, since these are the process-based plan, people participate in that process. Now, recently the Niti Aayog, a very new incarnation of the erstwhile Planning Commission, the Yojana Ayog, the Niti Ayog, in its Gazette notification, is specifically talking about as one of the fundamental objectives to prepare credible plans at the village level, which means that for all practical purpose, what you have to do, you have to prepare village plans. There are institutional arrangements which are already there as per the constitution. You have village level local self-government, you have block level local self-government, you have district level local self-government, and you have a very unique urban rural composition. There are village level local self-governments are known as village panchayats. There is a concept, legal concept called Grama Sabha. There are urban component called Nagara Panchayat. There are municipalities and there are municipal corporations, and all these are located in a particular district, right? So the district planning committee has to integrate, because that particular integrated area development plan framework, even it has been used in the constitutional amendments. Now the Niti Ayog further reiterated that idea, and moreover, as I was saying, that in the 21st century, if you have to attain that sustainable development goals, which talk about environmental sustainability, which talks about the climate change, which talks about all the dimensions that you think about, the sustainable livelihood, the sustainable health, the quality of life, how we are now thinking about ourselves and our young people. So that itself is a very important dimension. So now we are talking about how to plan for, if I give you one small example, how to plan to co-op with the climate change. Because climate change is not created by the villagers themselves. There is something which is happening outside, but my cropping pattern is being changed. My whole life is being changed. Temperature is being changed. How to cope up? So that itself is a very unique, challenge. And maybe I further provoke you to work in that area. How to use this? There is another important point. How to use this ICT revolution, which we call disruptive technology, in formulating a very good and substantial plan at the grassroots level. These are the new areas. There are various experiments which are going on in the using mobile telephones. How these people are doing it, how you can do it, and moreover, we have satellite data. Like in India, there's a very interesting example in Kerala that where the village people use satellite data. And those data are being compared with what villagers feel about that. So it means the data on one set of data are prepared by the villagers, other one is given by the scientists, and then both are compared. So that itself is I'm just giving you a few examples. So friends, now what we have seen the debate which goes ups and down, what should be the appropriate level of spatial level of microplanning. What should be the microplanning unit? And at present, practically district in India, district is a microplanning unit. You can debate it, but I can say the debate will go on. Maybe you can devise a new way to really identify the planning unit. So friends, this is about the spatial level. It's really interesting. Now, another complicated area is the spatial level we have talked about. We have talked about the structures that are required, the administrative structure, legal structures. Now, specifically on the methodology, because any planning, any intervention, if it is not need-based, you take this example. Suppose you have some problem, health problem. You go to the doctor. What doctor does? He or she first diagnose the problem. Now remember, if the problem is not diagnosed in the correct manner, if I am unable to diagnose the problem is not going to be resolved. The same is here in the context of planning. You as we discussed that in different stages, you collect the data, you analyze the data, you compile the data, you use all satellite data, computerized data, you consult with the experts and so on. But the point is, there are two ways to collect the data, because now I'm specifically focusing about how to identify the fundamental issues which are to be handled by the planning. And so roughly you can say that when you take location allocation decisions, you have two set of scenario. One is that you have a system of collection of data, you have a system what you call statistics, you have a system of collection of data. But here when you talk about decentralized planning, when you talk about bottom-up planning, when you talk about inclusive planning, when you talk about participatory planning, then there is a new approach. This is called participatory approach. So I'm just giving you the idea because this idea is beautifully gelling with or blending with the structures and the basic approach and the basic spirit of decentralized development. Okay. Now, the data that you collect, definitely you collect quantitative data, but there are certain data or certain information which are qualitative. So I'm just introducing an idea, a new approach which has been developed in the last 40 years. It is not I'm advocating it, but interestingly, the multilateral development agencies, like World Bank, like UNICEF, like UNDP, and leave all these things aside. Your government, there's a ministry, like there is a Ministry of Panchayati Raj, Ministry of Rural Development, Ministry of Human Resource Development, Ministry of Health. And if you read some of the processes, all these ministries says that we are living in a multi-planning scenario where micro plans are to be developed, and they compulsorily mandate the agencies or the development administrator to conduct the participatory analysis. So while conducting a participatory analysis, there is an approach which is called participatory rural appraisal. We say PRA, where we learn from the villagers, from the illiterate tribals, from the slum dwellers, from the people who live on the streets, because ultimately we have to plan for these people. So this is a new approach, and this is called participatory approach, where you work like a facilitator. You do not impose your ideas on the villagers. You ask the villagers, okay, from your understanding, what would be the more appropriate way to really resolve this particular problem? And this is called PRA or PLA also, participatory learning and then action. So you collect those data, participatory process data. If you browse the Ministry of Panchayati Raj website, you will find that there are processes which are to be adopted, that how to develop the plan, because ultimately article 243ZD, and there is a specific article called 243G. It talks about the 11th schedule and 12th schedule. So there are different activities which are like in 11th schedule which are for the rural areas, 12th schedule is for the urban areas. There are 29 functions within the rural areas, and all these functions are concerned with human development. Education is there, livelihood is there, health is there, sustainable development is there, agriculture is there, animal husbandry is there. There are comprehensive list as we have shown you in this list. Now that whole process is to be initiated, and you can think about how the whole idea of developing a plan document based on the participatory process can be initiated. Okay, now the last point that I would like to mention under this particular heading is that why we are talking about participation is important. There is a great debate. I'm just giving you a theoretical justification which ensures that participation is very important. There's a debate. Like in many of the development programs, participation of the local people, of the poor, marginalized, tribals, women, because that itself is very important, hard to reach people. Because if they participate, you will be able to achieve a goal. Which means that in one approach, you have to listen it carefully and see what is shown here is that in one approach, participation is a means, or participation of poor people is a means to achieve an end. Like in the initial phase, means in the 70s and 80s, there were many programs which were initiated under the social forestry or under the watershed development programs, where the government asked people to participate so that the forest development can be made, the trees can be planted. So the ultimate aim was planting tree, and then ultimately you are asking people to participate. This is one approach. There is another approach, is that, now again, is a very interesting idea, is that participation of the poor and marginalized is not a means, but is an end itself. Now there are it's like North and South Pole difference between these two approaches, and both the approaches are talking about participation. And that's why the whole idea of or debate, I can say, which was generated by Mahbubul Haq, a Pakistani economist, which was strongly supported by Amartya Sen, a Nobel laureate, and another important Bangladeshi. This is very interesting. The Pakistan, India, and Bangladesh. The Muhammad Yunus, who again got a Nobel Prize in peace, for peace. Now, these three people, they mainly focus on, this is my understanding, but focus on that no, human development. That's why new idea of human development comes. It is not income which is more important. It is the quality of life which is more important. Now these days there is a new concept called a happy development. There are a lot of interesting arguments which are being floated. But Amartya Sen, Mahbubul Haq established, and UNDP every year publishes the Human Development Report, that human development or the quality of human life is the end of all the efforts. So that's why this participatory process is ultimately aiming to empower people rather than achieving some other end. Just, on this process part, I will give you one small example. You can evaluate, you can conduct a lot of dissertations, action research. Like, take example from India. Like in Indian scenario, as per the 73rd, 74th Amendment, between 33 and 50%, the woman's participation or the woman's representative of the local self-government as the village level, block level, and district level are reserved for women. Which means, let me explain it in very simple terms, which means that 50% of the Gram Sabha, of the Gram Panchayat, 50% of the seats of the Gram Panchayat are reserved for women. Okay? Now, people say that, okay, these are illiterate people, these are etc., etc. There are a lot of blame game that can be talked about. Interestingly, this debate is again going on when you are reserving seats of women at the local self-government. Why not at the state level? Why not at the Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha? It's an interesting debate. but it is based on the fundamental concept given by Amartya Sen and Mahbubul Haq. So now you see, there were a lot of studies which were conducted when these poor women, illiterate women, marginalized women are given a chance to perform at the grassroots level. They performed very well, which means that if I say, okay, please come, now it is your local self-government and you have to take decisions. So that itself empowers the people. So here in this context, participation of people, that itself is an objective, and it has given a beautiful result. Now, but at present, both the approaches are blended for achieving some production process and for empowering the people. So that's why this whole process is very important.